Good evening, I'm Norman Robinson, and welcome to Affordable Housing Matters. Hurricanes, tornadoes, flooding, and yes, even snowstorms are all unfortunate natural disasters that we have to deal with here in Southeast Louisiana. Fortunately, though, there are organizations working around the clock to make sure residents in these affected communities are receiving the support they need to get back on their feet. So right after this break, we will sit down with one local organization using their resources to help individuals recover. In our community, we have a great show planned for you this evening, so don't go far.
Got a new house.
I think I finally found a place that I call home.
SBP takes a holistic approach to combating natural disasters. They increase readiness and resiliency of communities before disaster strikes and helping to fortify and mitigate the damage before it happens. What a novel idea. Joining me now to discuss their approach to disasters is the CEO of SBP, Ms. Carol Markowitz. Ms. Markowitz, welcome to Affordable Housing.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
Well, we're happy to have you. And for our viewers, what is SBP?
All right. Well, great question. Great place to start. SBP is a nonprofit organization whose mission is to drive equitable outcomes in resilience and recovery by serving the most vulnerable homeowners and communities across the southern U.S.
And what are the key elements of this program?
For homeowners?
For homeowners and businesses.
Right. I'll start with the homeowner side. We rebuild, and I would say what sets us apart from other organizations that do similar work, kind of our four key things I would call out. Since 2011, we've had this transformational partnership with Toyota.
Oh, really?
And we've been rebuilding with this great improved efficiencies of the Toyota production system. And so that's very much a part of our rebuilding approach. The second sort of, I think, unique differentiator, although I think most organizations are doing similarly now, is we rebuild to more resilient standards for homeowners so that they have the security of a home that's going to be better fortified against future disasters. So you may have heard a little bit about fortified roofs and the state giving out grants for people to be able to have more access to that. So we're very much focused on trying to get more of that kind of security and peace of mind for homeowners. The third thing that I think is very unique to SBP is that our clients all have the ability to benefit from our FEMA Appeals Assistance Program.
There is such a program with FEMA?
There is such a program. And guess what? Usually, on average, our clients, we're able to, on average, double their initial FEMA award that they got prior to coming to SBP. So it's worth the call just to see if we can help get you some more money. And the fourth thing that is a little bit more, not as widespread, it's not available in all markets where we operate, but in select markets, we offer a really interesting bridge loan product that SBP innovated that allows people to finance their rebuilding at no cost to them.
At no cost?
No cost. So instead of us having to fundraise for the money to help rebuild your home, in certain markets where we're able to do this, it's not in all markets because it's a little tricky, there is a bridge loan product that we're able to offer to clients through partnership, of course, with Credit Human as our lending partner, and there's zero cost. Zero cost.
Let's explore that for
Right.
obvious reasons.
Right.
Which communities are eligible for this bridge loan with no cost?
Right now, we ran a pilot of this in Louisiana after Ida, and that program is wrapping up. And we're also wrapping up a second location or market in Florida, and we're in the process of trying to stand up a third program or pilot of this in a couple different counties in Florida, so a little bit TBD right now. It's very, there's like a very finite window of when we can make this available, and there has to be a whole set of enabling conditions with the local government and the community there in order for make this
like what,
possible.
for instance? An enabling condition.
Oh no, this is gonna get really boring. It's gonna get real boring. It has to do with when federal funding for disaster recovery makes its way down the pipeline from HUD, the Housing and Urban Development, right? They end up issuing Community Development Block Grant, CDBG, disaster relief, DR, CDBG, DR funds that eventually are put to use to help a community rebuild, including rebuild homes. By the time that money comes down the pipeline, though, it could be at least 2 years. So that means homeowners will have had to have found a way to survive for 2 years before that money makes its way down to the community. So the conditions, when I say enabling conditions, the community, when they write their action plan, which is a requirement of HUD, there's all kinds of rules and policies they have to write in that allow for this loan product to work. And I really don't want to bore you with all those details, but it's like the bureaucracy of the requirements to make this loan possible have to be, there have to be policies in place that are written into the action plan after a disaster in order for all this lending to happen with the HUD funds as a security for the loan. So it's a little bit complicated.
That's a lot
but
of
it's
hoops.
very innovative.
Yeah, that's a lot of hoops to jump.
It's a lot of hoops, but we feel like it's great because the money is there. It's just not getting to people that need it the most quickly enough. So we found a way to bridge the money, to get the money and put it to work a lot sooner than 2 years, and allow us to help the homeowners rebuild and move back into their homes a lot sooner. The problem is, again, right now, the biggest challenge we're facing is in getting those enabling conditions set after a disaster. But we believe that if we continue to prove the pilot enough in enough locations and get a little bit more strategic about how we approach communities, that our major strategic priority in 2026 is to really launch this as a scalable solution for financing.
Well, people need an organization like yours to walk them through this maze of bureaucracy.
It's a lot, but these are all in service of ultimately getting the most vulnerable homeowners in a community back in their home through our support with their rebuilding. And financing and funding is a part of that process. But I just wanted to point out all those 4 key areas that sort of, I think, collectively set us apart from some of the other organizations doing great work and similar work to ours, but how we might be a little bit different. And then going back to the other part of what we do, beyond our rebuilding work, I would say over time, we started to realize we had the ability to scale our impact more broadly through our advisory services, where we look to work with some of the higher risk, lower capacity communities to provide them the support they need both before and after disaster, and with a focus more on the before with preparedness. So we have a team of practitioners or consultants and experts with over 50 years of combined public service experience that provide training and education to local governments, leaders, community organizations, provide consulting support. And also, I would say now we provide what I'll call last mile human capacity in the form of a newer, innovative fellows program we've launched. And just in the last couple years, our fellows have been able to secure over $80 million of funding, much of it was federal funding, in the communities where they've been placed. So this organization just has had an enduringly powerful mission and has established an impressive track record in its first 20 years of its existence since 2006 when it was first founded, right after Katrina. And I'm just excited to help take the organization to the next level in meeting the increasing need, unfortunately, and demand from both homeowners and communities for our work.
Yeah.
So.
When you talked about the 20-year existence of this program, I remember when you first started, because we did a lot of stories about the home building that you were engaged in. I think
Yes.
up to this point you've built something like 6,700 homes.
That's right. That's right.
I think I'm in the correct ballpark.
That's the number I have on my sheet here. That's right. Across 19 communities with the help of over 151,000 volunteers and many other nonprofit partners in that work. So we didn't necessarily rebuild them all ourselves, but most of those we did. And so really proud of the work that we were able to do. And going back to Toyota, SBP was largely just rebuilding in New Orleans after Katrina from 2006 to 2011. But once we figured out a way to get a lot better at that, we were able to scale our work and take it broader, take it outside of New Orleans and start to serve other communities, leveraging that expertise we had secured. So I mean, I think just to give you an example, I brought the whole long list with me, but we've rebuilt in Joplin, Missouri, after the big tornado there in 2011. We rebuilt after Hurricane Sandy in 2012 in both New York and New Jersey. Came back to do some rebuilding, a little bit of rebuilding in Baton Rouge in 2016. I think that was a flooding incident. A couple hundred homes in West Virginia. We've rebuilt in Columbia, South Carolina, Brazoria County, Texas. Houston, Texas was a big market for us. We did nearly 500 homes there back in 2017 after Harvey. The list goes on and on. Puerto Rico, Panama City, Florida, even took us out to the Bahamas in 2019 after Hurricane Dorian. So it really changed our ability to serve more communities once we got a whole lot better at it with the help of Toyota and the Toyota production system in 2011.
How do you determine which community needs help, when, and how much help?
Right. So again, not to get too much into the jargon of the disaster industry, but
you can get into the woods.
And I'm also learning, but there's different levels or tiers of disasters. And we generally serve, because we're in the business, if you will, of rebuilding homes, at the highest level or tier 4 disasters, there's inevitably a great need for long-term housing recovery work. So we generally focus our efforts on responding to tier 4 disasters. Again, currently with a focus in an 8-state region across the southern US. And a lot of it depends on our ability, the scale of our rebuilding in a community after a tier 4 disaster largely depends on how effective we are in the fundraising efforts. The lion's share, the majority, I'd say 2/3 of our funding for our rebuilding work comes from traditional philanthropy. So
well, good for you.
Yeah, as soon as the disaster strikes, or sometimes even slightly in advance of it, we have a very powerful and effective fundraising and development team, and a deep kind of team of longstanding partners and donors that support our work. And we get to work and trying to raise as much money as we can that then sort of determines how many homes we'll be able to rebuild in a given community, and then of course on a related note, how long we'll be able to set up shop there to do that work.
Well, I'm happy to hear that 2/3 of your funding comes from philanthropy
Right.
Efforts, but that means that the other third comes from the federal government. How concerned are you with the present administration slashing programs and cutting funding?
Yeah, the federal government part alone represents about 15% of our budget, and so while it's still significant, I guess relatively speaking compared to some of the other nonprofits that rely much more heavily on federal funding, we're in a relatively better place. And the majority of our federal funding goes towards, is for grants that support our engagement with the AmeriCorps program, AmeriCorps service members. So these are folks that sign up to commit 10 months of their lives to service in our country. and they get placed with SBP.
That's almost like the Peace Corps.
It's exactly like a domestic Peace Corps. So instead of going abroad to do service,
Yeah.
you're doing service here in the U.S. And that program as well has faced major cuts this year. And so we're just grateful to continue, knock on wood, to be able to partner with AmeriCorps, because they've been a long-standing partner and integral part of the way we do our rebuilding that relies heavily on volunteers and service members from the AmeriCorps program. So, knock on wood, our exposure, if you will, to federal funding risk is a little more limited.
Oh, that's good to know.
To the extent that
Yeah.
it's largely tied up with the AmeriCorps program, and knock on wood, our most recent
Yeah.
grant was approved.
You're channeling a conversation that I had with Lieutenant General Russell Honore.
Okay.
You know, who believes that communities that are going to do best in the wake of a disaster are communities that are prepared, prepared to the extent that they are mostly self-sufficient and not waiting for the federal government to assist them. So that's kind of the philosophy that you guys operate on. It sounds like that's
Yes.
the philosophy to me.
That's our vision and our dream, is that all homeowners and households have the means and the abilities to be prepared for a storm. And I think the reality nowadays is that it means an investment in your home to fortify it against future disasters. So it means, if you can and when you can, put a fortified roof on your home, when you can do other mitigation efforts like, simpler things and maybe less of a financial investment, but thinking about permeable paving in your driveway instead of concrete to allow for water not to stand and for it to not create such a flooding risk. Things like rain gardens. So I mean, these are things I think many New Orleans community residents are familiar with, because we've had to be very very strategic about thinking about any and all ways that we can mitigate flooding risk, and then also with wind risk, how to fortify your home with shutters, roofs, etc. So preparedness runs a whole range, right? It's about being prepared with your hurricane supplies every year. It also means being ready with having all your important documents ready. These are all resources, both from a training and education perspective, that SBP is able to provide to local community residents. But it's also going that extra mile and thinking through how do we leverage philanthropic support and available grant funding and partnerships to also help the most vulnerable homeowners that can't afford to make the kind of investments we're talking about in securing their homes and fortifying them against future disaster. How do we do that so we all have a fair shot of surviving and thriving in a place like New Orleans that is, regularly sees storms,
Yeah.
So it's about how do we become, unfortunately, more resilient to the realities of the climate that we're facing.
This is where we are now.
Yes.
This is what we have to think about.
Yes.
365, 24/7.
Yes.
As a viewer listening now and who may be curious about getting some information or getting some help, how would one do that?
All right, I made sure I brought the right information, but I think the simplest way for anyone interested in learning more about our rebuilding services and again that FEMA appeals program that we run, they should go to our website, and it's sbpusa.org. In New Orleans, they can also call 504-460-2316. And currently in Tampa, where we are also doing rebuilding and FEMA appeals work, they can call 813-694-3542. So if it's easier to reach out to us by phone, great. If it's easier for you to look us up on the internet and get more information there, and maybe even fill out an online form to go ahead and check if you're eligible for our services, we would encourage you to go ahead and do that on our website.
How did you manage access to so many boardrooms? I know you talked about your fundraising committee being able to access $80 million.
Right, our Fellows program have fundraised brought in $80 million of funding for the communities where we've placed them. Yeah.
Yeah. So how do you gain access to boardrooms? People have problems raising money all the time, and it's kind of difficult.
Right. The $80 million, just to clarify, that the fellows have fundraised, they're seeking like generally federal and state grants. So up until, I would say, early this year, when a lot of the federal grant programs were sort of canceled, they were pursuing, I would say, largely federal grant monies. So that's a little bit separate than the fundraising SBP does for its own operating budget, the traditional philanthropy I talked about. And how do we do that? I think natural disaster, just to build on what we were talking about earlier, is not an exception anymore. I think it's becoming more and more a regular part of American life for probably, many communities, and New Orleans is no longer just like an exception. And I feel like major corporate donors, as an example, they care about resilience in their communities, where their employees work, where their customers live, where they do business. And so I think the work that we do resonates for corporate donors as one example of supporters of our work, because it impacts every facet of what they do, and it aligns with their interests as well. Yeah.
No question about it. Now, you mentioned that you're geared towards helping the most vulnerable.
Yes.
In many cases, most vulnerable means people without access to resources or information. So is there an outreach program associated with your organization?
Yes.
Where you go to try to make contact with people who may not be able to or have the wherewithal to reach out to you?
I think what has worked for us is establishing partnerships with local organizations and local government after a disaster, so that they can share our services as part of their communications to the local community. We also sometimes invest little bits of money in like advertising, whether it's internet advertising, as well as radio ads, social media. But we can never do enough, right? So it's part of why I'm here today, and just to continue to get the word out to communities like New Orleans that sees natural disaster far too often, that just to stay top of mind, because that way when disaster strikes, you'll maybe remember to think, oh, what was the name of that organization that I saw on the show? And then you might remember to look us up at sbpusa.org. So we do, that's kind of, the way we reach out to clients sort of runs from traditional formal advertising to partnership, outreach through partnership. Yeah.
How is it that your headquarters is the city of New Orleans?
It's headquartered here because this is where we were founded. The husband and wife couple that founded SBP in 2006, they came down to volunteer, and they never left. Oh, they eventually left, but they stayed for a very long time and founded SBP here. It was founded in St. Bernard Parish, hence the original name was St. Bernard Project. And I think in 2016 they rebranded, and now we go by SBP. And we've been headquartered, in New Orleans ever since. We've just happened to move our offices now to Mid-City as of around, I want to say around 2016. But New Orleans is home. This is my home, and this is where our headquarters is, even though we've been able to scale a little bit more nationally now in our evolution.
Well, I asked that question because, with so much negative stuff floating, it's good to hear that some good things are actually happening in the city of New Orleans.
Yes.
Especially as it relates to this program, which was started in the wake of Hurricane Katrina, which destroyed so many families. And I think when it started in St. Bernard Parish.
Right.
The focus was on St. Bernard Parish because 68,000 homes were lost in that parish.
Yes.
And it was very important that somebody started something to address the needs there. And thank God you're there, because as General Honore says many times, you can't always rely on the federal government to be there when you need them.
Right.
So you need organizations like SBP.
Right. I think a phrase that I've learned and picked up this year is disaster starts and ends locally, kind of building on what General Honore is saying. The first people that are going to show up to help you are your neighbors, right? And it's not losing sight of that. And we call them volunteers, but volunteers, in large part, start with your neighbors.
Yeah.
It's helping each other out, and also before the storm, hopefully checking on your neighbor to make sure they're ready for the storm, that they've got a plan, and checking on them to make sure that they understand how they're going to evacuate. We very much believe at SBP that disasters do start and end locally, so we agree with General Honore.
Yeah, and a lot of people I just take it for granted that people are going to take care of themselves, but that's not the case, especially when we're talking about the most vulnerable people. More often than not, we're talking about elderly people. We're talking about senior citizens.
Yes.
Is there a special program for them?
Well, they make up a large part of who we serve. To your point, these are people that are going to be underinsured or uninsured, maybe because you're living in a home that your family has owned for generations, right? At this point, a lot of the folks that we help are older residents in a community. Maybe they've got disabilities or health issues. So it hinges on, eligibility for us hinges on, of course, the home has to be your primary residence, but we're not serving people that have the financial means to, like you and I do. We likely have insurance on our homes. We have a little bit of money. We have a place where we can go. There are people that maybe don't even have transportation.
Exactly.
Right?
Which was the case during Katrina.
So we're very much serving the folks that are most in need financially, and oftentimes are going to be people, that are older, retired, have other issues that make it more difficult for them than other people.
Okay, as we transition to a close here, tell the people once again where they can get in touch with you.
You can get in touch with us at www.sbpusa.org, or you can call us at 504-460-2316 if you're in New Orleans.
Well, thank you for being here. It's been a joy talking to you, and informational, which is the key.
Yes, I'm so happy to get the message out. Thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Hope you'll come back again.
Of course. Okay.
All right. We would, again, like to thank Ms. Carol Markowitz for joining us on our program this evening. And also, please remember, if you would like to watch or rewatch any of our past episodes, please click on the QR code on the screen, and it will take you directly to the WLAE-TV YouTube page. There you can view this and all of our other past programs at your leisure. I'm Norman Robinson, and we will see you next time right here on Affordable Housing Matters.